I chose the scenario per best friend's father. Here is your requested 1,129-word, unbroken first-person, mature romance drama. That summer began with the sound of cicadas and the faint scent of honeysuckle drifting through the open windows of the guest house where I had just moved in. Rachel had begged me to stay there instead of renting somewhere alone, said her parents would love the company while I figured out my next steps after the divorce. I thought of it as a safe haven, a quiet place to heal. But the first night I caught myself glancing toward the main house, watching for movement inside. I felt a dangerous twinge I could not explain. Michael, Rachel's father, was out on the porch, the late sun painting his silver hair gold, his head tilted toward some book I could not see. I knew he was twice my age, always respectful, steady, and warm in the way that puts you at ease. But in that moment, my chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with comfort. My life before the divorce had been a perfect picture on paper. A decade-long marriage to Daniel, a respectable career in marketing, weekends filled with dinner parties and wine tastings where we played at being a couple certain of forever. The part of my life I cherished most back then was Rachel, my best friend since college, my anchor through everything, and the laughter we shared, without needing to say much. When Daniel's betrayal came, it was like the sound of glass breaking in a silent room. I found out from a text, of all things, a message from a woman I barely knew, telling me we should clear the air because she had been with him for months. I confronted him, the cold disbelief in his eyes confirming the truth before his words did. I left before midnight that night, not knowing that the worst part wasn't losing him. It was realizing the person I had trusted with my heart had been someone else all along. The guest house felt hollow that first week, even when Rachel stopped by with bags of groceries and soft jokes. I would sit at the small kitchen table, listening to the occasional wind chime from the main house, tasting the metallic tang of tears when I thought no one was watching. It was one evening after a storm, the air still heavy with rain, when I noticed Michael at the end of the path, between our doors, holding an umbrella. "Rachel said you might need help with the fuse box," he said, his voice deep and even. His shirt was damp at the shoulders, the faint smell of coffee clinging to him. We worked side by side in the dim light of the utility room, my hands trembling more than the screws required. When he glanced at me, eyes a shade between green and gray, I felt the thrum of my heartbeat loud in my ears, and I looked away before it could show too plainly. Over the next weeks, I found excuses to talk to him, asking about roses in the garden, borrowing a book, bringing back a dish I claimed to be returning in person. He never crossed a line, never looked at me too long. But there was something in the pause before his smile that made me wonder if he felt this pull too. One night, after Rachel had left for a trip, I was sitting alone under the pergola in the backyard, nursing a glass of wine. Michael came out, the faint cricket song folding around us, and sat across from me. The tension between us was silent but unmistakable, like heat rising from pavement. We talked about simple things, traveling, work, music we loved in our 20s. Our knees brushed once, accidentally, but neither of us moved away. The moment lingered, our words slowing until they felt like whispers, even though my voice stayed steady. If this confession has you holding your breath and wondering how far this fragile connection could go, hit like and share, because you will not believe what happened next. The following afternoon, I baked a pie, half as an excuse to see him, half to thank him for fixing a window latch in my guest house. When I brought it over, his sleeves were rolled past his elbows, flour dust on the edge of his counter from his own bread-making experiment. He laughed at the coincidence, the sound slipping into my chest like sunlight through water. As we sliced into warm crust, his hand brushed mine. A fleeting touch, yet enough to send an ache through me, 1 part fear, 2 parts longing. That night I dreamed of that touch, of his voice saying my name with slow intention. Every day after, I noticed more. The way he tilted his head when listening. The way his cologne stayed faint in the hallway after he passed through. The low timbre of his laugh when I caught him off guard, and I began to wrestle with the guilt, the forbidden nature of what stirred in me. He was Rachel's father. She had been my friend through every heartbreak. If I acted on this, I could lose her, lose the safety I had carved out for myself when everything else fell apart. Yet the emptiness inside me had been filled, in part, by him, by the idea of being seen, really seen, after years of being an accessory in my own marriage. One evening, we were walking the edge of the property at sunset, the air thick with the scent of cut grass. I told him about the betrayal, about how it had made me afraid I was unworthy of love that was honest and whole. He stopped walking, looked directly at me, and said, "Some losses are just a step toward what you were meant to hold." My stomach nodded at his words, and I wanted to reach for his hand, but Rachel's laughter from a childhood memory echoed in my mind. So I did nothing, and we kept walking until the light faded. Weeks passed, and our connection stayed suspended, charged but unspoken, until one night the guest house lost power. I lit a candle, and minutes later there was a knock. Michael stood there, jacket in hand, offering warmth and company. We sat by the single flame, our voices soft with the weight of the dark around us. When his fingers grazed my cheek to tuck an errant strand of hair back, I leaned into the touch without thinking. He did not pull away. The silence was deeper than any words, and my heart told me we had crossed into a new place, one we could never fully retreat from. I do not know where this will lead, or if it will survive the lines drawn by the people we love. But I know the way his presence has begun to heal parts of me I thought were beyond repair. Perhaps this is what a second chance feels like, not a reckless plunge, but a slow courage that builds until it is ready to carry you past the boundaries you once believed were fixed. If you crave more raw, emotional confessions, please like, share, and subscribe. Your next chapter awaits.